All right, hello, Triple E 470. This is your classmate Jared Blunt again, and we are in a section of this class that is dealing with system protection, and one of the tasks in the project is to coordinate overcurrent protection. So I figured I'm in a position where I can kind of show you what some of these relays actually look like, and hopefully that might help with your understanding of what it is you're actually doing with these relays. So in the book it talks about a CO-8 relay, and so without further ado, this is a CO-8 relay. Okay, if I zoom in real close on that, and hopefully this thing will focus. Hey, there we go. Westinghouse catalog CO-8 relay. Okay, overcurrent, and it has taps that go from 1 to 12. Okay, and then that indicator right there, that 0.2 to 2 amps DC. Okay, what that is DC current is used for energizing the trip coils for your breaker, but also this little indicator here, okay, uses that DC as well. So when this relay trips, it energizes this coil and it drops that little target right there. So after something trips or there's a relay operation, right, an operator comes to the substation to figure out what's going on. Well, this relay will drop that little target, okay, and that lets the operator know that this relay has actuated. And then you can go back, and then there's a little glass case where you go, and then this thing will reset, just boop, like that, and then it just holds there. And the next time it trips, it'll drop that target again. There's a little coil right there and a little pickup right there, you can see that, and every time that energizes, boop, drops the target. So there we go. So these CO-8 sit in these black cases, okay, and then they have these what we call FT switches. So that red 1 and the 10 right here, because it goes 1 through 10, this is where your DC comes in, okay, so you'll have positive DC. If it's a positive trip station, you'll have positive coming in here, and the other side will be negative soaked. But when we're testing the CO-8 relay, this is where you sense right here, okay, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then this is where your current comes in right here. And if you'll notice, all right, you got this little device right here, okay, and even with this switch open, okay, these are still making contact. And the reason they put these in here is so you don't open up the CT secondary circuit, okay, inadvertently. You do not want to do that. All right, it was mentioned in the lectures by the professor, and that's no kidding right there. You do not want to open up a CT secondary under load. That is bad news. If you do it, you'll know. You'll have this huge arc fly out at you. It is not a pretty thing. And on top of that, you will also interfere with your relay's ability to protect the circuit because you've just removed the current signal. This can be extremely detrimental to you in a differential circuit, where if you accidentally open up a CT, you could not only get a big blue arc flying out at you, you could also inadvertently trip off a bank or a line because you just took the current off one end. And if you're above the set point for that differential to operate, you will have what's called a currentless fault. And a currentless fault, that is a very good indicator that someone made a mistake somewhere, right? Because all faults, okay, all faults have high magnitudes of current. That's That's a given. So if all of a sudden you get a differential relay operation and one end shows, load remaining consistent, and then all of a sudden the other end shows, that same load going through the other end, then it just drops to zero, yeah, someone's going to be asking questions about that. But anyway, let's get back to the CO relay. So back to the CO relay. It comes in this case, and it's got these little connections here, and that's where the actual wires that you're running from the CT, okay, they'll come in and connect here and here, right, to make your circuit, and then this is your DC circuit, that 1 and 10, okay, and then these mount up on a board, and that way they're able to be used. Usually it'll be, well, not usually, it is. You'll have one for each one of the 3 phases, and then if you're using one to trip for a single line of grounds, or just zero sequence current in general, you'll have a residual ground relay. So generally, especially in a distribution circuit, you'll have 3 COs, 1, 2, and 3, and then for each phase, and then you'll have a ground relay, which sometimes is a CO-8, sometimes it's a CO-9, right? So it'll be a very inverse relay instead of just a CO-8, which is an inverse relay. And CO-9 will also have different tap values, which I'm going to show you the CO-8s right now. So these come out pretty easy. Let me try and mount my camera in a way where I can, let's see. Yeah, sorry guys. Alright, just have to bear with me here. So these latches lock it in, okay? So you lift up, and then this should, I'm going to have to set this down to pull it out. Actually I had that backwards. Down and down. Up latches it in, pull them down, and it comes right out of the case. There we go. Alright. So, CO relay, okay? So, first thing, okay, I'll go over some of the terms that were used in the textbook and kind of show you where you actually manipulate that on the relay. So the first one will be the tap. Okay, so you've seen, and probably during your project, you're calculating taps for, 2, 3, 4. Well, this is it right here, this section. And there's this little screw right here that you basically, there we go. You take this screw and you screw it into whichever tap that you've calculated. So right now, this relay, that tap is set for 6, okay? And for just so you know, and just because there's a lot of different terms that can mean the same thing, so you might hear terms like tap, minimum pickup, all those things are the same thing. So this tap right here is set for 6. This relay needs to see 6 amps of current going through it before this disc right here starts to turn, okay? And it's shown in the textbook, it's shown a little like a drawing, but this disc actually turns, and after I kind of go through the descriptions of this relay, I'll hook it up to a current generator and actually show you what it looks like when it starts to turn, okay? But that being said, okay, this tap is set for 6. It needs 6 amps minimum current through the relay, all right, in order for it to even start turning, okay? So that whatever the tap is, that's the same as the pickup, okay? The minimum amount of current needed for the relay to start operating, to start turning, okay? Then the second thing you hear about is the time dial, okay? And so you're setting the time dial for your radial system, okay? The farthest one out that isn't backing up, and yet you want to operate the fastest. You're talking about setting that for 0.5. Well, this black dial right here is your time dial, and you can see it's got a little line going down the center, and it's got this little dial. So if I wanted to set that, oops, wrong way. If I wanted to set that for 0.5, I would take that. There you go. That time dial is now set for 0.5. Okay? And what that does when you manipulate the time dial, if you look real close, I'll hopefully get a good shot of this. Okay? It has this little plastic butt right here, okay? And as if I move that out, you'll notice if you see that little guy turning right there, those are your trip contacts, okay? You can see that turn. It's got that little bulb right there, okay? And what happens is, as current starts going through the relay and you're above your minimum pickup, okay, it starts to turn this disc, and that's attached to those trip contacts right there. You see that? Okay, it's got that little bulb, and I'm moving the disc right now, and you can see that moving. Well, what happens is, if you can look real close, I'll try and get in there. If you see this little hockey puck looking thing right there, okay, that's it. That's the other end of those trip contacts. So if you get fault current going through, that disc starts to turn. What happens is that little bulb, pink, touches that, and that completes your DC circuit, and your breaker trips. That's all it is. That's all it is right there. Okay. Well, if I manipulate this time dial, right, notice how that relay is resetting and it's going back. Well, if I take that, and right now it's set for, I rolled it back and it's set like somewhere just above 2. If I roll that to 0.5, notice how that brings those trip contacts closer together. Okay, so what happens is when that relay, if you go above the minimum trip, there's less time it takes, okay, for those trip contacts to come together, okay. And then if you notice, especially during your project, right, you're moving out farther away from that last bus, and you're getting closer to the source, okay, that time dial starts to go up, okay. So like, I don't know, let's assume it's going to be around 5 or something like that. Okay, so I'm at 5. And you can see those trip contacts resetting, because this disc, if you look, you can see that disc turning. It slowly starts to return back, okay? And you can thank that little magnet for that right there, okay? Or actually, excuse me, it's not the magnet, it's these springs right here that kind of, as you turn it, it tightens it up, and then as it goes, as the current comes off, it'll start to reset that. Excuse me, just 1 second. All right, sorry about that. I'm at work showing this, but let me get a relay here. All right, so you got where was I? All right, time dial. Yes. The larger the time dial, the farther these trip contacts have to move in order to make up over here in order to trip your relay. There you go. Okay, so other parts we talked about, your indicator here. So, yep, trip, drops the flag. Okay, you got your transformer back here, and those are all those taps that are wired all together, right? You got your magnet here, all right? So as current flows through this relay, okay, it actually goes through a shading coil and interacts with this magnet and actually turns your disc, okay? CO's been around for a long time. They've remodeled them a little bit. This is a very, very sturdy relay. It's very reliable, okay? And although they are starting to be removed from service in favor for microprocessor relays, if you're in a pinch, you know, you can always throw a few of these in and you'll be good to go. So what I'm going to do, as promised, is I'm going to hook this up to a current generator, and I'm going to push some current through it. Okay, and so you guys can see what it looks like when you actually push current through these relays. So this is an old school multi-amp. It's a current generator is all it is, and I got my contact set up here. to sense when those trip contacts come closed. And I don't know what this is. There we go. Go away. And then my current, okay, it's hooked up here. Remember that COs are non-directional. Non-directional, okay? It does not care, and I'm going to have to put this down for a second. COs are non-directional relays. It does not care which direction current goes, okay? It can be real power, it can be reactive power, it doesn't matter. It doesn't care what angle, okay, it's going through. In fact, it doesn't even know, right? There's no voltage inputs on this relay. All it does is sense current, so it doesn't matter which way your angle's going. All it cares about is the magnitude of the current, and that's it, okay? So I'm going to show you a few things. So this multi-amp, I'm going to set it, okay, let's see what I got my current at. I'm going to hit it really hard so you can see what it looks like when the disc turns, okay? So with it set at, with the tap set at 6, I'm going to go 3 times tap. So I'm going to go 18 amps, which is a lot, okay? If you got 18 amps going through your secondary, it's definitely probably a fault condition. And depending on what your CT ratio is, will determine what your primary amps actually is. So that CT ratio is very important when it comes. In fact, it's one of the few first things I look for if I'm applying new settings to a relay is what's the CT ratio. Am I going to have to change the taps on the CTs at the breaker? But as far as relay is concerned, it doesn't care about the CT ratio. It just cares about the current going through it. So that's how we determine, you know, hey, what's the primary amp? What amount of primary amps do we want this relay to start turning? And that's done by the CT ratio. Okay, so I got this thing hooked up. I got it set for 3 times current, so I'm going to push 18 amps through it. And then after it's done timing, okay, I'll show you the time. So here we go. So there you go. Okay, and I'm going to take the current off, and to see when I take the current off, that this starts to turn back. It's kind of hard to see, but well, I'll get the edge there. See, it starts to reset. There you go, and it'll reset all the way back. And so that took just a hair under 3 seconds for that relay to get to for those trip contacts to come closed. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, okay, we're set at a time dial of 5. I'm going to bring that down to like 1. Right there. Right there. Sorry, that was bad camera work right there. So now it's set at 1. Okay, and the disc isn't moving anymore, so it's reset. So I'm going to hit it again. Maybe. Sorry about that, guys. Cockpit error. I accidentally hit this normally open to normally closed, so I had to switch that back. All right, so here we go. There you go. That's it. Those trip contacts came closed. Okay. And it took half a second. So you could see, as I moved that time dial down, okay, it took less time for that disc to turn and make that trip circuit come closed. Okay. So now, I'm going to set this time dial for like 9. Just so you can see the other end. So there you go. So now it's set for 9, and that disc is resetting. I'm going to speed up the process a little bit here. Okay. Want to be gentle when you do that, by the way. Just barely even just guided along. So now I got a time dial set for 9. Same tap, I haven't changed that. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to hit this thing. There we go. That took 5.5 seconds. Okay, so the time dial, right, by adjusting the time dial, you are physically what you're doing, just to reiterate, is you're changing the amount of time it takes for those strip contacts to come closed. And that's what you're doing. That's how you adjust that T-op, if you will. That's what that is. All right, I'm going to pause this and then set up again for something else. All right, sorry about that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this tap. Okay, so, and I'm going to show you what the pickup is all about. So right now it's at 6, okay? And so, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you this. So, I'm going to show you as I ramp up current until you get to 6 amps, it doesn't do anything. So, right now, I got this thing on, but I'm not pushing any current through, so this isn't turning, okay? So I'm going to start coming up. So right now I'm pushing 4.37 whatever amps through it, not moving, okay? So I'm going to slowly bring up current until you start to see this disc move. Oh, there it goes. That was really high. Hold on, let me... Sometimes you have to listen for it because it doesn't... So it's barely wanting to go. And this thing isn't very accurate. It's 6.4, so technically we're at the pickup. I'll bump it up a little higher. There you go. That disc is starting to move now. So that's what the pickup is. So you get around that 6 amps, usually go a little above it, and that disc barely starts to turn. You can barely see it moving right now. But if I increase the current, I'm just going to wing it here. Whack. Right, there you go. Okay, you increase the magnitude of the current and it makes that disc spin a lot faster. So I'm going to come off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change that tap. I'm going to bring it all the way down to, I'm going to set that tap at 2 right here. So get a little flathead screwdriver. Goes in. Once again, I apologize for the bad camera work. I am not very proficient at it, but you know, I'm trying. You guys are my guinea pigs. What can I say? So I got my little screw. See that? Just all that does is just whoop right back in there. So I'm going to set that, and there's a little arrow right there. Set it for 2. Snug. You do not gorilla torque these. Okay? Do not gorilla torque these down. Snug will do it. Just okay. You do not need, if your biceps and triceps are getting into the action on making those taps tight, okay, that is bad news. Okay, you don't need to do that. That being said, it does need to be snug, okay, because as we talked about before, you never want to open up a CT circuit. If you take this tap out and you leave it out, okay, you will open up the CT secondary by doing that. Okay, so one safety thing is if you do have CO relays wherever you're going, okay, you never, ever, okay, if they're in the case and there's load going through, you do not ever remove that tap while it's in play, which you shouldn't anyway. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Okay, you should definitely have your position cleared, or at least your protection solid and your currents rolled out, so you don't even run into that. But just so you know, if you have current going through this relay and you open up this tap, yeah, that's gonna suck. Okay, so I set the tap for 2. Okay, so now I'm gonna kick this thing on. Okay, 0 amps. I'm going to start slowly coming up. Oh, there it starts going, see? I can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it, but there you go. I'll give it a little more. Yeah, if you look at that little smudge, you can see it moving. So if I look up over here, that current's, 2.5. Okay, and then once again, if I crank it up, it'll go faster. But that shows you the effect of what happens depending on what your tap is. So if your tap set at 2, it only takes 2 amps of secondary current to get that disc turning. Set at 6, it takes 6 amps. And that way you wanted to show you that so you can actually see it physically, and hopefully that makes a little more sense for you. Okay. All right, so yep, that's the CO relay in a nutshell. That's a really quick introduction to them. There's other things like curve characteristics. If you notice on those curves that you saw in the textbook, right, you get there whenever you put these in service. The most important point that you test is your timing test, right? So there's a certain point on the curve where, as a protection engineer, you want this relay to operate. Okay, I want this relay to operate at this current at this time. Okay, that goes along with your coordination of your protection. But a CO-8 relay, if you remember, if you look at your textbook, it has that curve. Okay. And so when you put these relays in service, you actually test different points on that curve to make sure that the relay is following that curve. So when I put it in service, I'll usually test 5 to 7 points. And I'll make a video of that. I'll hook up the CO-8 relay to an actual power system simulator and show you some of the software that's used, and I'll make up some, or actually I won't even make it up. I'll pull off some protection settings that we actually use out in the field in my area of responsibility, and I will show you how I would go about making a CO ready for service. Okay, so hopefully that was a good beginner's introduction. I know this video is like 27 minutes, and I apologize again for any, lulls or any goofy video work, but hopefully you guys see this and it starts to make sense to you a little bit more. So the next video I'm going to make is I'm going to set up the CO-8 relay, and I'm going to show you some protection settings that were issued, and then I'm going to show you how I would set up a test plan to make sure that CO relay was good to go and be ready for service. All right, thanks.